Hello! How is everybody doing? Fantastic. Have you had a good morning? Lots of excitement as I understand it. So just a quick poll. Who here is from the government? Okay, who here is from a foundation space? Who here is from companies, private sector? Who here is from academia? Okay, who has not raised their hand? Who are you? Oh, okay. The nonprofit sector besides the foundation sector. Who here is from the nonprofit sector more broadly? Okay, who still has not raised their hand? Okay. Wow, what a fantastically diverse group. And united, I am sure, all of us with a love for challenge competitions and open innovation. So it's my great pleasure to be here today to spend a few minutes chatting with you over lunch about open innovation and challenge competitions, which are one of my favorite subjects in the whole world. And I'm sure that you've actually heard quite a lot this morning about why to love challenge competitions as a new tool in the toolkit, whether you be a government agency, a foundation, or a company. They help you establish an important goal without actually having to pre-pick the best team or approach to actually solve that goal, which is particularly useful for problems that you really can specify, but where the solution is really just not something that's gelling in your head yet, or where you suspect that the solution in your head isn't necessarily the optimal one. Prize challenges are fantastic because you pay for results, basically, which is a phenomenal place to be. You can radically increase the number, the diversity, the depth and breadth of the pool of problem solvers you can actually access. This is one of actually my favorite aspects of prize competitions, is that they really enable you to cast the net much more broadly than you might otherwise do. One of the things that the president talks all the time about is that in American society today, expertise is increasingly dispersed. So you really want to cast a wide net if you really want to get the full brain power of the country, all the brain power you really need on a given problem. In fact, actually, the emerging academic literature, as I understand it, on prize competitions shows that the problems that are being presented are being disproportionately solved by unusual suspects. So folks who aren't necessarily in the usual problem-solving space on a given problem, but have incredible expertise and inspiration to bring to bear. Challenge competitions also stimulate private sector investment many times the value of the cash rewards. I'm sure you've heard a lot about. And they further your agency's objective, or your company's objective, or your foundation's objective in terms of awareness raising and focusing public attention on a given problem in a way that few other things can. And so this is actually, these reasons are all a big part of why we in the government are increasingly excited about challenge competitions, not as a sidelight or as something to think about kind of on the fringes, but really as kind of the third leg of the stool, as a key new tool in the problem-solving toolkit for folks in government. And this is actually increasingly happening in the private sector as well. In fact, we see a future that's actually potentially already here in a lot of places where government program owners or problem solvers, when they're thinking about how to go at a given problem or opportunity, don't just think grant or contract, they actually think in the same breath a challenge competition as a key tool, a mainstream tool to bring to bear. But what I want to talk to you about today is actually, I think, the next level of how to think about challenge competitions, about how to think about prize competitions. And that's the whole notion of really optimizing what they produce by thinking of them as part of a broader ecosystem of open innovation. I think challenges done by themselves can be spectacularly successful, but what you actually don't want is just to do them like a meteoric shot through the dark that burn quickly and generate great heat and light and then disappear, right? What you want to do is harness what they produce as a source of heat and light that can help power virtuous cycles of open innovation and awesomeness. And so this is something that actually we're learning a lot about across the government as well as in the private sector. And one particular example I want to talk about in terms of how to construct an ecosystem of innovation in which you actually deploy prizes and challenges as a key tool is something called the Health Data Initiative, and more broadly, the Open Data Initiative work that we're doing. So just as actually a background question, how many folks here have heard of the Health Data Initiative? Okay, fantastic. So actually, I won't go through this in detail. I'll just actually focus in particular about the role that prizes and challenges have played in it. But for those of you who don't know what it is, essentially it's an effort that we launched at HHS about 2.5 years ago to liberate vast amounts of health-related knowledge information from the vaults of the government in machine-readable form, and basically market it, publicize it to innovators and entrepreneurs in the public, who have then proceeded to take that data as fuel and turn it at no cost to the taxpayer into an amazing array of new products, services, and features that help improve healthcare and create jobs at the same time. So first of all, actually, for the whole Health Data Initiative, we adopted a kind of meta-challenge structure. So what happened is, you may not know this, but we actually got the whole thing started with a small group of about 40 innovators, tech and healthcare innovators, public and private sector innovators, who got in a room at the Institute of Medicine's building in March of 2010, and we put a pile of data from HHS on the table and said, look, what if we made this data available, really easy to use, et cetera? What would you do with it? They brainstormed about 20 different classes of apps and services they could actually build with it. And then we said, okay, in 90 days, we're going to host a health data palooza, and we challenge any of you who can build one of these ideas to build it, and we'll make you famous. And sure enough, actually, in about 90 days, entrepreneurs, innovators showed up, and they had built about 20 brand new or upgraded apps or services using open data, which were incredible, right? And then inspired more innovation, more innovation, more innovation. And that's actually culminated most recently in the 3rd annual Health Data Palooza, which we actually just did last week. It's grown a bit since then. 1,600 people came together in the Washington Convention Center in a huge palooza sponsored by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Institute of Medicine, and about 20 other organizations. 242 companies and nonprofits competed for the right to speak and exhibit at this palooza with products or services they had built powered by open data. To actually get through to the palooza, they went through an American Idol-style process where panels of patients, doctors, nurses, community leaders judged them to determine who can actually make it in. So this whole kind of meta-challenge structure that we've imposed on the Health Data Initiative has really been phenomenally successful. And in the context of that, the whole ecosystem has used challenges in a really, really interesting way. So first of all, the government has sponsored several challenges related to health data. So for example, HHS sponsored something called the Leading Health Indicators Challenge for folks to actually build apps and services that used community health metrics like obesity, smoking, et cetera, to power apps and services that could help citizens, help mayors, help public health officials, help employers, et cetera, understand what's going on in the community and how to actually improve it. A National Cancer Institute came up with a challenge for how could you really leverage cancer data, public cancer data, to help improve cancer prevention. And this is actually one of my favorite challenge stories because the winner came up with an idea that had just not occurred to anyone. It was actually a team of folks at University of Washington, St. Louis. They said, well, how could cancer data really play a role in helping with cancer prevention at a community level? And they followed the following chain of logic. They said, well, who's really, really good at mobilizing awareness and action in the community? They said, journalists. So why aren't journalists writing more stories about, say, cancer disparities by gender or race ethnicity, or cancer issues as public health issues? And they said, well, it's because very few journalists these days can afford their own dedicated public health analyst. So what this team at University of Washington, St. Louis did is they ended up building a virtually free virtual healthcare analyst for journalists called Ozioma. You can actually find it at localhealthdata.org, and ingests huge amounts of data from the National Cancer Institute and other sources to provide essentially a research assistant, virtual research assistant to journalists. So if you're a journalist, you can go to localhealthdata.org. You can say, I'm interested in writing a story about cancer disparities by gender in these 5 communities. And then basically the machine will start crunching for you and start writing bullet points for you and even writing sentences of your story for you to take like 98% of the work out of writing local stories about cancer disparities by gender. Just awesome, which can then actually raise awareness, which can then mobilize action that hopefully helps to prevent cancer. So that's just really exciting because it's an idea that wouldn't have occurred to anybody in the usual suspect zone, and it wasn't just an idea, it was an actual working app that journalists can use today. But even as cool as the government challenges were, the vast majority of the challenge competitions being launched in the context of Health Data Initiative are being launched not by the government. They're being launched by foundations, they're being launched by companies who see government data made publicly available as a key new ingredient that they can challenge entrepreneurs and innovators to use to build things that advance missions that they actually care about. So Sanofi Aventis, for example, ran something that it considers to be, it's actually said this, the most successful innovation experiment they've ever run as a company, which is a challenge to leverage vast amounts of data publicly available to help build tools that help diabetics manage their own health. It was actually won by this amazing company, Ginger.io, which has become a very, very hot company. And Sanofi's so excited about this, they're actually launching a second round of this data design diabetes challenge. The state of Louisiana. I remember actually I was down in Baton Rouge giving a talk about health data liberación, and I wasn't sure how it was going exactly. And there was a guy who then suddenly stood up named Ramesh Kolaru from the University of Louisiana and said, I am really excited about this. I'm going to do a health data codathon in Lafayette, Louisiana. I said, that's fantastic. I wasn't sure what happened next, but then basically 4.5 months later, I got invited to go to Lafayette, Louisiana, which I did. And Ramesh and the state of Louisiana, actually working with our Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, had convened a 300-person codathon, kind of a live challenge happening over the course of 36 hours, with people coming from 18 states and as far away as Germany to use massive amounts of data made publicly available by HHS and by the state of Louisiana to construct solutions, applications, services that will help contribute to the fight against childhood obesity. So it was incredibly successful. 6 companies have gotten started out of the output of that codathon, and it was started by this amazing guy named Ramesh Kolaru in Lafayette, Louisiana. The Palo Alto Medical Foundation did what I think is the first recorded hackathon ever done by a medical group. So Paul Tang at Palo Alto Medical Foundation actually invited me to come hang out at a hackathon he was going to launch. I thought, oh, okay, well, there'll be like 8 people in a room, and they'll be talking with like 4 doctors about health data. And instead, I walked into this room with like 500 people and this elaborate setup where they essentially launched a public challenge to build apps and services powered by data that could help people with the problem of successful aging. And I can go on and on and on and on, but I guess my point is that there's an enormous amount of challenge activity happening that is actually principally, in the context of Health Data Initiative, sponsored and driven by the private sector, leveraging open government data, as well as actually government challenges happening in parallel. And one of the best things about how challenges and codathons are being done is that, again, they're not kind of meteoric shots in the dark that burn brightly and disappear. They're happening in the context of a growing ecosystem of innovation, right? So basically, if you do a challenge or a hackathon in healthcare, you can draw upon this increasingly large and diverse array of free data as fuel to power the solutions you're trying to build, right? When you actually finish building them, there is a growing network of incubators who are interested in the winners and interested in supporting them with seed investment and with advice. There are a growing array of venture capital firms that are incredibly excited about health data-powered solutions that are interested in what's coming out of the incubators. There are growing marketplaces of patients, consumers, doctors, health systems, communities, employers interested in what's being built. So the point is that these challenges are not sort of one-off shots in the dark. They're accelerators of action that actually help get stuff produced that feeds into a broader ecosystem of innovation that can take what is produced by them and scales them. And I think the thing that's actually most exciting about the challenges and hackathons is that it's actually not necessarily the specific apps and services that they're building. It's the people that they are recruiting into the innovation ecosystem. And so I just want to tell one story to exemplify this. There was a codathon that was done by Academy Health, Georgetown University, and HHS last year. It was February. And basically Georgetown said, look, let's do a codathon. Saturday, 9:30 a.m., just invite anyone to actually come. I was deeply worried about this. Because I said, look, well, this is not Silicon Valley. Who's going to show up on a Saturday in February at 9:30 a.m. to learn more about health data and build stuff with it? Secondly, I said, look, developers don't get up until noon, right? So who's going to show up? 130 people showed up. I don't know where they came from, but they included these 5 young people from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. How in the heck they had heard about this, I don't know, but they actually heard about this Academy Health, Georgetown Health Data Codathon. They got inspired. They bought matching lab coats with insignia with their team name, Team Maya. They rented a van and drove from Odark 100, however long it takes to get to DC for a 9:30 a.m. kickoff. They knew nothing about health and healthcare, but they wanted to help, and they hadn't known previously how to get in, and they thought this was the way to get in. So they come in, they talk to a bunch of our experts, and they learn from USDA data about this phenomenon called food deserts. Have you heard about this, food deserts? Food deserts, if you look at USDA data, they're big swaths of America where if you live in one of those areas, you do not have access to affordable, healthy food. I don't care how good the doctors are in the area, that's going to have a bunch of health issues, right? So there are entire public health symposia about the intractability of the food desert problem, right? These kids had not been to any of the symposia, they had read none of the literature, they had not gotten the memo about what's impossible, and so they decided to solve the food desert problem over the next 8 hours. And they came up with this phenomenal solution called Food Oasis, which is this kind of flash farmers market solution. It's a brilliant mashup of text messaging and farmers markets. So if you have access to text messaging, which virtually every American does, including most Americans in local neighborhoods, you can text in the fact that you want to buy a zucchini and 5 tomatoes. Your neighbors do the same. It all goes to a website. And then food suppliers, farmers markets, co-ops can actually go to the website and say, I'll fill these orders. I hit fulfill and text everyone back. Brilliant. And because you don't need a physical store, because you know demand 100% in advance, and because basically when you show up at St. John's Church at 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., by 5 p.m. all your inventory gets bought like that, the cost of food drops massively. So they won the Code-a-thon, they won the prize. Even more awesomely, they got really interested in this problem, right? And they've actually turned it into a new venture. They've actually gotten backing from a major American company. They're launching a beta test of it in 3 American cities. And while they don't know anything about health and healthcare, they turn out to be experts in something called supply chain management and consumer experience design. And for those of you who work in healthcare, you'll know that healthcare needs a lot more of those 2 things. And so I went to go visit their headquarters in Pittsburgh, and they have this whole room that's one giant whiteboard, and they had diagrammed down the nth level of detail how they're going to pressure test every single component in this process until it worked. And I have no idea if what they actually built is going to actually work in its initially conceived form. Probably not, because it'll probably iterate a lot. But here's what I do know. These 5 kids are now addicted to the whole idea of improving health and healthcare, leveraging the power of data. And they're never going to kick that addiction, right? And so the real win from the challenge was not Food Oasis. The real win is getting these 5 kids addicted for life to the problem of how to make health and healthcare better in America. That is the real win. And that's how I think we should think about the deliverable, right? But then you need to think about what's the ecosystem in which to actually plug these folks in. And so thinking more broadly than the challenge, thinking about the ecosystem innovation into which you're plugging the challenge, I think is a key to do if you want to reap maximum returns on the challenge. And this is just a really, really important thing to think about, because at the end of the day, and the president talks about this all the time, right? You know, we've got big challenges and big opportunities in this country. And the best way to take on those opportunities and challenges is as a country, right? To team up, to embrace the whole idea of all hands on deck and open innovation, right? One of the things we're seeing across government under the leadership of the president is this whole idea of embracing the power of innovation for the people and by the people. The whole notion of open innovation, the whole notion of saying, look, if government actually teams up with, collaborates openly with, unleashes the power of the public, of the private sector, of the citizen sector, the nonprofit sector, academia, we can as a team get so much more done than if actually government acts alone. And prizes and challenges, to me, are just one amazing new tool, and a very powerful, amazing new tool in this broader philosophy of government. An amazing new tool that we can use to actually get citizens involved, get folks involved in problems we're trying to tackle, leverage the power of the people to deliver innovation for the people. So this is a really, really, really big deal. We're incredibly excited about what's happening. We're incredibly excited about the challenge competitions and the open innovation being pioneered by folks across the government. I'd be more than delighted to talk with you in more detail about any of this. My email address, which I always give out, in case you're wondering, is tpark, T-P-A-R-K, at ostp.eop.gov. I apologize for the complicated email address. I read all my own email, and if you've actually heard me speak before, then you know that I have this protocol, which is that if I don't get back to you within 36 hours, please actually no, 72 hours, sorry, 3 days, hit reply with "you idiot," and your actual email head subject, because I actually search Outlook by "you idiot," and so I can be sure to get back to people. And there's a hack that people have learned, which they're passing on to each other, which is that if you put "you idiot" in the first email, you'll save yourself about 3 days. But we are really passionate about this. We're really passionate about challenge competitions as a new tool in our toolkit as the federal government to embrace the power of open innovation, unlock the power of the people to deliver innovation for the people. We're seeing it deliver amazing early results, particularly when you think about it in the context of broader innovation ecosystems like Health Data Initiative. By the way, we're as part of a new Open Data Initiatives program, we're launching a energy data initiative, a education data initiative, a safety data initiative, an impact data initiative in the nonprofit sector, and we're actually running the Health Data Initiative play again, including making use of challenge competitions to help spur interest and help engage people in ecosystems. So we're going to keep running this play, but we know there are many, many, many opportunities to actually apply the power of open innovation as well. In fact, actually, even if you don't have questions, if you've got like a spectacularly cool idea for how to leverage a challenge competition in your work, I'd love to hear about it. Because I'd love to actually talk about and help spread the word about, make you a rock star as you deserve to be. So please let me know, even if you just got something really cool you want to share, because I'd love to spread the word. So thanks so much for sharing your time with me over lunch. I'm so excited that so many people are excited about challenge competitions. God bless you. May the force be with you as you advance open innovation, and God bless the USA. Thanks a lot.